our government in the back channels would say we kind of know where they are. They're just not where we want them to be. But more importantly, there was a lot of what's called radiological material. Now, that could be everything from plutonium-235, which can be used in a weapon, to cobalt or radon or radium. And these were used in different types of ways: construction, medical, government facilities. The plutonium would have been used in like nuclear reactors for power up in Siberia. And what we do know is when the Soviet Union fell, a lot of those buildings were vacated and those places were scrapped to include for the radiological material. So for at least 40 years, we have had censoring devices that work every single day in shipping ports, at ball games, large gatherings on major highways, usually employed through a helicopter or a truck, looking for radiation to see if anything is out there. We've had attacks in our homeland generated by homegrown terrorists. And so the theory is some of these may be implementing or testing radiological detection devices on drones. If you did that, you would have to cool them with what's called a cryo cooler, so not having a heat signature makes sense. So it begins to like sound rational. But that's just a theory. There's 2 Twitter threads that bring it up. I cross-section that with my own knowledge and people in the industry I know well, and it's plausible, it's reasonable, but it wouldn't account for everything we're seeing, and that's why I think that there are multiple things happening and people are just paying attention more.
Yeah, and a lot of accusations are flying around, Anita, and these theories that are circulating not only on social media, but in people's conversations, and they're worried that these could be foreign agents. These could be foreign countries. We have many enemies now after the Biden administration that are using their resources to spy on us. And after the Chinese spy balloon, people say, well, why wouldn't you think that at least it's plausible?
Well, of course. And, you know, there are lots of other theories out there because the government is not telling us anything. I mean, the idea that the government doesn't know who's operating these drones, where they're from, is really questionable. Think about the vast amount of intelligence that the United States has, the United States military. Remember, under Trump, a U.S. drone took out Qasem Soleimani, the former Iranian military official, with a drone strike because we knew exactly where he was. So we know a lot. How do we not know about this?
Absolutely. You make a great point. We want to get to this as well because President-elect Trump is naming former House Intelligence Committee Chair and Truth Social CEO Devin Nunes to serve as chairman of the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. Nunes and Trump's pick for the FBI director, Kash Patel, they worked closely against the deep state during Trump's first term in office. The president-elect's incoming administration is expected to dismantle the deep state. They're also expected to examine the FBI's handling of confidential human sources in the lead up to January 6th. According to the DOJ's Inspector General report, the FBI had at least 26 of them on the ground that day, but only 3 of them were actually approved to be there. Watch what Kash Patel said last year.
What you need to show is whether or not the FBI and government agents were using undercover operatives and informants on the day of January 6th. Once you prove that, then you defeat the insurrection narrative with the FBI's own documentation.
So, Guy, I want to get your reaction to this. Ultimately, there's a lot that we don't know about our intelligence resources, and President Trump wants to start to look into that to make sure that everything is above board and on the up and up, because when you hear things like this, you do have to wonder.
Yeah, I think there's a way to connect these 2 stories that we're talking about in this segment, and that comes down to lack of trust and lack of credibility, right? There is this reservoir of distrust among so many Americans across a whole front of issues. And I think some of the people coming into the Trump administration round 2 are going to be more prepared, eyes wide open for things that maybe they weren't the first time out. That's at least the hope, I think, of a lot of Trump supporters. And as it ties back to the drones issue, at the very top of the show, we played 2 sound bites, one from Alejandro Mayorkas reassuring us of things, and another one of a Pentagon official saying absolutely untrue things about the Chinese spy balloon. And I think that goes to the heart of this issue. People do not believe. Mayorkas is one of the least credible and trustworthy people in government. He told us for years that the border was secure. Why on earth would we believe him now on something like this? He's completely ruined any sort of basis of truth that we might have for him. And the same, unfortunately, goes for the Pentagon spokesman. If they were telling us, because immediately with the drone stuff, I went back to the spy balloon in my own mind. They told us, oh, it wasn't collecting any information. They couldn't transmit it. We waited for the thing to go across the entire continental U.S. till we finally shot it down on the other side of the country. And then we found out that, yes, it was collecting and transmitting throughout the whole process. And it's like, okay, I hope that the government knows more about this than they're telling us, but they would maybe go a good distance here in restoring some of that faith if they could just level with us. The problem is they aren't, and therefore it's all these theories and conjecture flying because we have nothing else to work on.
Yeah, and you and I, Anita, were talking about John Kirby's interview with Martha where he said, we don't know. And it's hard to look at somebody like that and say, well, why don't you know? You should know.
Right. And, you know, you've experienced these drones yourself, Jackie. We talked about that. It is unsettling, especially when you really don't know what the heck is it, right?
Yeah, just anecdotally, in my house, not far from Bedminster, about a month ago, my mom spotted these drones. They make a rumbling sound. They're very scary. They were coming out at night. She had no idea what it was. And I told her, when she told me, I said, you're crazy. And this was like, we were talking about this weeks before it was actually a story. And then I saw one myself. And ultimately, you have to ask yourself, who is this? And why are they looking into my backyard? Why are they here? I thought the Bedminster proximity might have something to do with it. I think we're going to hopefully find out more.
They have to know, right? It's actually more scary if they truly don't know.
Exactly.
But I think they do. I think they're just not telling us.
Yeah, well, we'll see. They don't tell us a lot.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.